you want this microphone?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
No.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Hello and welcome to Voice of the Voiceless, Speak Your Truth. Today I have Michelle here from the Doula Sanctuary. We're going to talk about homeschooling. So one of my first podcasts I did on mandatory vaccinations, we mentioned briefly homeschooling. Sorry. And after you listened to that, Michelle, you said that you wanted to talk about it because you felt like it was misrepresented. And since then, I've met a few more parents who homeschool and I've had a taste of what it's like. And one of them even pointed out that I'm practically homeschooling my daughter, Kinder, now. So since then, I'll admit that I agree with you. And it's so much more than I originally thought. So I'm really super keen to get into it.
Yeah, and look, I think I was the same as you. My first thought of homeschool, and from what I can gather from other people, same as you, meeting other homeschoolers and talking about how their journey began and why they're doing it, is our first impression is we're bringing the school curriculum into our home and we're following the same structure as like you're sending your child to school. But instead of sending them to school, you just get up and you have a school day at home. Yeah, and so I find too that when, say, I'm down the street with the children and often my children will get asked, oh, no school today. And they say, oh, no, we're homeschooled. And often, people go, oh, it's sort of like they get taken aback because they're not sure what it is.
Yeah.
And so when I first decided to homeschool, what I assumed that I would do was enroll them in some sort of homeschooling program that was perhaps run by the government, because we know the government kind of, overlooks the schools and their curriculums and things like that. And I thought that I'd be given a curriculum to follow and that I would follow that at home. And as I started researching, I found out that that was completely not the case. And so the only information that the government gives you when you choose to homeschool is that you have to address 8 key learning areas. And so that's English, maths, science, humanities and social sciences, the arts, languages, health and physical education, information and communication technology, and design and technology. When you first read that, that can seem really overwhelming because, again, I was in the mentality of, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to write up this curriculum like a school does and follow these 8 key learning areas. And so I went off and, again, most parents do this. You go off and you start joining websites and looking for resources and finding blogs. And I wrote up like a lesson plan. I was like, we're going to do maths on this day and science on this day and this on this day. And within probably a couple of months, all of that just gets thrown out the window. And what I've realised is that we ourselves as adults, because we've been put through the school system, we're preconditioned to think that that's what education looks like. So as soon as we think about homeschooling our children, by default, we go straight into schooling mode ourselves and think, okay, let's follow that curriculum. That's how we learn. And so the parents and the children, if they've already been at school, we go through a deschooling process. And sometimes that can take up to 12 months for a deschooling process to happen. And it can be quite unsettling, particularly if a child's like later through primary school or in high school. Like I found my daughter probably took nearly 12 months to deschool. And deschooling looks a little bit like school holidays. And most parents think at the end of school holidays, oh my God, thank God my kids are going back to school. But what's happening is they're going through a deschooling process, and that is hard work. So they just want to basically shut off from everything. They want to spend a lot of time on the iPad. They just want to watch movies. They don't really want to help around the house. They're not really in tune with the flow of what's going on in your life. So everything just feels all disrupted when suddenly you've got these kids at home, the parents not used to having them at home, and the kids are used to being at school and being told what to do. And sometimes they start really misbehaving too, because I think it's their way of being able to have some sort of control and creativity back in their life. Too many questions so far. I feel like I'm rambling.
I'm just curious, just for people listening, also for myself, because I don't actually know. How long have you been homeschooling for?
Yeah, so I started homeschooling at the start of last year. So it's only been, well, this is coming into my second year now, so not a long time, but it feels like this is what I've always done. It feels extremely natural to me. And over the year of, as I said, going through the deschooling process myself, it's opened me up so much more to just so much more, which, I want to talk about a lot of that today, obviously. Yeah.
Cool. And deschooling, from what you're saying, so deschooling is sort of letting go of all the conditions and things that you've picked up at school. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it basically is. It's basically our subconscious, I guess, just running on default, and just that's the first thing that we turn to is what we know and what we're programmed to know. And as I said, if we've gone through primary school and high school and perhaps gone to TAFE and then uni, and the majority of us out there have gone through that process. So even when you're up the street and your child says to an adult, I'm homeschooled, that would be the picture that instantly comes to them without even thinking about what it actually means to homeschool and what the process actually is. So you were mentioning in your first podcast how I felt homeschool was kind of misrepresented. The reaction of, and I don't mean to, like, it's not a negative thing or anything like that, but I just felt that same reaction of you guys were coming from that place of you've all been schooled and you're picturing bringing school into the home and you having to deliver that curriculum, and you're like, oh, there's no way I could cope with that. And that's definitely a huge misrepresentation of what homeschool is.
Yeah, one thing that I've heard a bit, and that I said myself originally when I was thinking about, the idea of me homeschooling, is that I wouldn't have enough patience.
Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it? Yeah. Look, I think even when your children go to school, parents sometimes don't have enough patience for their child. So it's quite a natural emotion that we have, because children can be quite demanding. So whether they're homeschooled or whether they're not, but you will find that homeschooled children are a lot more settled than school children, and you'll actually find them a lot easier to manage and a lot easier to be around.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you get a break from your kids while you're homeschooling?
Yeah, good question. Well, me personally, I wake up before my children. So I like to get up early. I like to have my time to do my meditation and, do some little things for myself. And then I'm quite happy to just go about my day. Time away from my children, well, I don't know. I guess it's kind of hard for me to answer because I don't feel like I need. There are times where I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had no kids. And, but again, I think even if your children are at school, and in the past my children have been at school, and I've still had those same emotions when they're at home on the weekend or in the evening or something like that, and you think, I just need a break. So the same rule applies really, even if your children are at school. What do you do when you need a break from your children? It would be no different to homeschooling.
Yeah, well, I guess for most parents, if their kids are at school, they're probably at work.
That too.
So they wouldn't get much of a break anyway, would they? Very
true. It's extremely true. And actually that brings me into the history of when school was created.
Yep.
Back, I think it was around just after the World War II time, we created the industrial industry and we built lots of factories. We came into a time in our evolution where we discovered science, and we learned how to replicate and manufacture things. And so, the factory industrial world was born. And what came with that was we needed a lot of human workers in the factories. And around that time, women were very employable because they got paid less. And so we built schools, and schools pretty much became a babysitting service for our children so we could get women to work because we could pay them less.
Yeah.
And the way we taught children in schools was we wanted them to be successful in the future, which I think is what every parent wants at heart. And to be successful, you needed to be a good factory worker. And what comes with a factory worker? You need repetition, you need to be able to follow instructions, you need to be obedient, everyone sort of needs to be the same. And so we now, today, fast forward to where we are today, we live in a very technological world, and a lot of our technologies are taking over human jobs. And so the way we need to be now as adults to go out and get a job is we need to be creative, we need to be innovative, we need to be independent, free thinking. And the way we're brought up in school is we're told what to think, and, you know, it's chant, memorize, and we don't have space through going through school to actually free think and create. Yep. A lot of that gets shut down when we're going to school. So I guess for me, I started questioning, well, what is the point in sending my child to school today when really we don't need degrees to get good jobs today? Mm. I know job specific, if you want to be a doctor or something like that, you're still going to need a degree. But the majority of jobs today and what we're moving into, there's a lot of entrepreneurs, there's a lot of things online. It's about creating, you know, your own courses. And yeah, the world has opened up from just working in factories, and schools are still stuck in the old way of learning. All the children need to line up, they need to sit down together, they all wear the same uniform, and everything's very repetitive. I was talking to a teacher, and she said to me, you know, there's been a study done that high school students, they study and study and study to pass a test, and they might get really high grades. And then you move on to the next thing. Now, if you were to go back a couple of months later and give them the same test that they passed, they'd fail. Yeah. Because they don't actually imbibe any of the information. So it's just, again, it's surface chant, memorize to pass. We don't actually really learn it. We don't really understand it. And, boom, it's gone. Mm.
Yeah, that's so true.
And also children are, you know, they're constantly told what they need to be interested in and what they need to learn. And I know myself, like, I don't like that. Yeah. If I'm not interested in something, I just can't take it in. Yeah. And I know this from going, like now I'm older, going to TAFE and completing diplomas and things like that. There's been parts of it where I'm like, I can't take it in, and I struggle so much with trying to do that work. And, you know, that is the life of our children through school.
Yeah, so true. So with homeschooling, you're able to follow their interests a bit more?
100%. Yeah, to me, it's just an extension of parenting, homeschooling my children. We know when our babies are born, we get to know our child. We know what works for them. We know how to approach them. We know when they're tired and when they're not. And, you know, homeschool is just an extension of that. So, and realistically, we don't need to sit down and learn things via a computer. A child is constantly learning, even if you're not trying to make them learn or trying to teach them anything. I think the opposite, like try and stop them from learning. And then that kind of opens you up to see how much they're naturally learning every day. Yeah.
Well, that's what they're, I guess, wired to do, isn't it? So they can become adults, they just naturally learn.
Exactly, and we are naturally inquisitive. Otherwise, I mean, look at the world that we've evolved into. That's from our human nature and human instinct, is we want to do more, we want to create more, we want to try new things, and we have a natural drive to aspire to the things that we love. And it feels so good when you dream of something and it matches your passion, and then things start happening and you can feel yourself growing towards that passion. And I don't know, I just find that schools, I mean, for me personally, it never nurtured that side of myself.
Yeah.
I left school and didn't know anything about myself. I didn't know anything about pregnancy and childbirth, and I'm a woman.